America's highest court is about to strike down a woman's right to choose an abortion. An unprecedented leak of a draft copy from the Supreme Court today threatens to overturn half a century of abortion rights, the leak sending shockwaves through the U.S. and around the world. For more on what this means and the impact this could have on women's rights here at home in Canada, we welcome to CP24 tonight from the University of Toronto, Judith Taylor, sociology professor with the Women and Gender Studies Institute, Rebecca Cook, professor of Emerita of International Reproductive and Sexual Health Law, and Dr. Gail Robinson, professor of Psychiatry, Obstetrics, and Gynecology. Thanks to all of you for being here. Judith, let's start with your reaction to this news today. What will this mean for American women?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is an American story, but it's also an African American story. And the fact that it's out of Mississippi is really very poignant because Mississippi has a history of brutality against African American women, and this is a continuation of that history. So I think all of U.S. women and Canadian women watching are hanging in the balance, and it's really important for us to understand this state commitment to brutality against a particular subset of American women, and the courage of this particular women's clinic in Mississippi that is at the center of this challenge.
Judith, can you explain a bit more about why you think this is a bigger issue for specifically African American women?
Well, I mean, it's not a coincidence that this case is at the center of the challenge. And when you look at how some of the poorest states and some of the states that have been the most brutal in terms of racism are the most interested in curtailing women's rights, we have to kind of connect those pieces together. When we think about the history of sterilization, forced sterilization, when we think about the history of taking children away from mothers, when we think about abortion in the greater context of reproductive justice and the way that that has impacted women of color much more greatly in the United States, it helps us really understand much more deeply why conservatives are so focused. When really, when you think about it, 90% of counties in the United States don't even have an abortion provider.
Okay, Rebecca, I want to bring you in on this issue of reproductive justice. In anticipation of a ruling on this, many anti-abortion bills were passed in GOP-led states this year. They do not have exceptions for rape or incest, only to save the life of a mother. Talk about the message that sends and the impact that will have.
I think the message that it sends is it degrades women as a general matter, and it degrades the women of Mississippi as a very specific matter. It discriminates against them on grounds of gender. It discriminates against them on grounds of race and poverty. So I think that if the decision does go through, if the draft is accepted or a version of it goes through, it will have a devastating impact on the women of Mississippi and the women of the United States.
So, Dr. Robinson, that is, do you expect the number of abortions to go down in states that ban this?
Abortions never go down. What happens is that legal abortions go down, and women start to have backstreet abortions with all the risks of dying from bleeding to death or infertility or totally destroyed organs. So nothing changes except women get desperate. And I would just expand. I agree that Black women in the Mississippi case have certainly been a feature of this racism, but all poor women are going to be subject to this, whatever their ethnicity. Rich women can always get on a plane and fly to another state where they can get an abortion. It's the poor women who can't afford to have another child, or may be in a difficult domestic violence situation. They're the ones who are going to get caught.
Judith, do you want to come in on this? Is abortion a class issue?
Entirely so. I agree with both of my fellow panelists incredibly. And I think, what I'm seeing among young feminists on Twitter and on some of their NGO sites is this real focus on RU 486 now, which is the abortion pill thinking about how to disseminate, how to educate, and how to make sure that people are doubling down on sex education and understand all of their options if clinics are adversely affected. So there is a lot of solidarity across state lines, across national lines, and that's really beautiful to see, and a lot of really on the ground thinking about how to protect people in the moment, because court cases happen and then rights get affected immediately.
So, Rebecca, if this goes ahead, share with us your legal thoughts on what kind of rights women may have to access an abortion, maybe in another state that does allow it.
Well, there have been, in the past 25 years, 50 countries have liberalized access to abortion. And on a variety of different grounds. Rights to women's equality. Most recently, the Colombian Constitutional Court decided that on the grounds of women's rights to their conscience, women's rights to call their souls their own. And this is what Justice Bertha Wilson mentioned or ruled on in the Morgenthaler decision in 1988. So courts use a variety of different constitutional rights to ground their reasoning for the right to access abortion, rights, as in the U.S., to privacy, in Canada, rights to security of the person, rights to liberty, including their rights to conscience, their rights to call their souls their own, and most recently, their rights to equality, not only on grounds of sex, but race, and also age, because this decision by the Supreme Court, if it goes through, will disproportionately impact adolescents.
So, Dr. Robinson, is there a strong pro-choice sentiment here in Canada? I mean, could this have an impact on abortion rights here at home?
You know, we're a different country than the States. The States, if we get it away from class, they're just a very misogynistic country. You can get insurance to pay for Viagra, but you can't get insurance to pay for contraception. They have no maternity leaves in the States. Coverage for pregnancy and postpartum is limited, such that the United States is the only one of the developed countries where there's an increasing rate of death of mothers and neonatal infants. So there's a whole negative attitude. We have a much more women-friendly kind of approach. And I think although there are some issues about access in certain parts of the country, people really accept the idea that women should have a right to control their own body. Now, I know some politicians are trying to drum up anti-abortion sentiment, but I don't think it's going to work in this country. I think seeing what happens in the States doesn't make us say we want to be like them. It says we want to be very different from them.
So, Rebecca, if this does happen in the States, what kind of message does that send to women? I mean, could this have any other ramifications for privacy rights like contraception or gay rights?
It could possibly in the States, but I think here in Canada, our rights are more secure. I mean, there is a risk that there will be bills introduced to try to limit that right, but it's politically very, very risky in Canada. I think the other thing about Canada is that we have access, we, as Dr. Robinson said, we have access to our health insurance generally covers access to abortion, while it doesn't in the U.S. Furthermore, we've worked very hard, especially during the pandemic, to improve access via telehealth and via telemedicine. And that's very, very significant that the abortion pill is covered and very widely available. We still need to improve that access, but we have made a very good beginning.
Judith, I just want to give you the last word with a couple of seconds. Are you concerned about this having a trickle-down effect to other kinds of privacy rights?
I'm not concerned about that, but I would like to see both the American Medical Association and the Canadian Medical Association do more and stand up for women's rights in this moment, and not just leave it to Planned Parenthood and the feminist NGOs. I think we really need that support. We really need that expansive voice, and in both countries. And, abortion was only decriminalized in Canada in 1988, and we did have bombings of clinics, and we did have jailings of providers. So I just want to make sure that our institutions are really protected and standing up in this moment.
Okay, a really important conversation. We so appreciate your time tonight. Rebecca Cook, Judith Taylor, and Dr. Gail Robinson, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.